Slowly, and then suddenly. We've heard it countless times before, but Bitcoin Miami 2023 was proof of that when two presidential candidates got on stage to both speak positively of Bitcoin. By the end of this video, you will know exactly the candidate that Simply Bitcoin would endorse for President of the United States of America. I'll be playing clips of Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who is running for president as a Democrat in 2024, and Vivek Ramaswamy, who is running as a Republican. Both of these individuals got on stage and talked for roughly 20 minutes at Bitcoin Miami 2023, and I'll be sharing my thoughts on some of the points they made while on stage.
That utopia will come through exercising perfect control over society. And that works well as long as the good guys are in control, or your guys are in control. Bitcoin is a bulwark against precisely this kind of government and corporate expansion and intrusion. In fact, it has been used to bypass oppressive government controls over the monetary systems, as in Canada and Myanmar. As president, I will make sure that your right to hold and use Bitcoin is inviolable.
Right there, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is making the point that the control of your keys, the control of your own property, is one of the most fundamental and important things that we have as a human. Seeing Robert F. Kennedy Jr. double down on his protection of freedoms, our ability to say this is mine because I've earned it, is extremely heartening to see.
So now they're coming for me for the same reasons they will be coming for you. Here's how they're coming for you. Now you see in the budget, 30% possible excise tax on mining for Bitcoin or for digital assets in particular. That is wrong. You do not use punishments for a specific use of energy. One of the things I've said is that you don't want any special favors. Well, then guess what? You don't get any special punishments in return either. We need the government out of your hair rather than regulating what kind of energy is actually used for what purposes. Fair treatment for all.
Fair treatment for all indeed. If the same energy coming from a dam, the sun, a nuclear power plant is going to power your toaster, your computer, your Tesla, and that same exact energy is going to power a Bitcoin miner, it doesn't matter what the energy is going towards. If what you want to do with your energy usage is power a computer and watch Netflix all day long, that shouldn't be taxed. If somebody else over here wants to use their energy usage to run their AC on full blast because they like it crispy cool in their house, they should be able to do that. No tax. If somebody else wants to use their energy to power a Bitcoin miner, there should be no tax on that. In this next clip from Vivek, he explains that because the government can't control something as decentralized as Bitcoin, they might try and use some other sneaky roundabout ways to attack it.
Here's what's going to happen a year or two from now. You turn off the government's ability to overreach. They will use the private sector to do it through the back door. Companies going public, listing publicly now. Turns out those publicly traded companies are owned by a small handful of financial institutions. Institutions like BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard, that today are using the money of everyday citizens to tell companies like Chevron to adopt Scope 3 emissions caps, or companies like Apple to adopt hiring policies that the company didn't want to adopt. You mark my words, where this puck is now going is that as, for example, companies in the Bitcoin space go public, the thing we now have to watch out for is making sure that they don't use ESG or other standards to do through the back door what government could not then get done through the front door under the Constitution.
That is some sneaky nonsense he's describing there, and he's 100% right. If they can't use the normal, regulated rules of law to do exactly what they want, they'll impose their wants and whims some other way. They'll say, hey, BlackRock, remember how we gave you all those special deals? And hey, Vanguard, remember how you got that special stuff and how you lobbied for us and we're now in positions of power and we're all now in cahoots with each other? Well, we want you to start regulating Bitcoin and the people, the proponents, the users of that network in this way, in that way. Start taxing this. Just as Vivek says, they will use the private sector to do what they could not do through the front door, because that method isn't available to them. So they'll use whatever means they can. In regards to the government trying to do things and sometimes getting in the way of themselves, today on Simply Bitcoin Live, Chris Alamo of Bitcoin Magazine made a rather amusing point.
One thing that's very, very funny, though, that's kind of missed by many Bitcoiners, actually, Europe shot themselves in the foot. What I mean by this is they're obviously trying to push for stricter and harsher financial regulations. But what many people didn't realize, something that passed, I think in 2021 or 2022, the EU won a lawsuit against Apple saying that Apple had monopolistic practices by only listing the App Store. Obviously, when you have an iPhone, you can only use the App Store to download apps. Since the EU won this lawsuit against Apple, it means that Apple has to open up to third-party app stores, meaning that in theory, even when you list an app like a mobile iPhone app and you have to go through the Apple approval process, developers now with this lawsuit passing and Apple losing, they have to welcome third-party app stores. So meaning that you guys like Oppie, Chris, and Nico could have an app store and we could list Bitcoin apps in there.
I wonder why the EU passed that law. I wonder what it was the politicians were thinking then. It wouldn't surprise me if there was some more backroom dealings and somebody wanted a piece of that sweet, sweet app store money. So they contacted their politician buddy in the EU and said, hey, Apple shouldn't have a monopoly on the app store. We should have alternatives to that. And maybe the EU said, oh, you're right about that. How about you give me a kickback? Thus, unknowingly opening the door to the possible creation creation of the Bitcoin App Store, which would now be legal by law in the EU. In which case, if Apple came in and said, no, 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 you can't have your wallet on the App Store, it has to have KYC because of the EU, you could also say, well, how about we go to the alternative App Store because of the EU and the law that you passed a couple years ago. Oh yeah, about that. The importance of Bitcoin covers many facets. In this next clip from Robert Kennedy, he talks about the importance of decentralization.
The whole point of Bitcoin is that it's decentralized. Anyone can run a node, and it's important not only for Bitcoin, but for democracy to be decentralized.
You might be asking yourself, why does that matter? Who cares if democracy, if government is decentralized? If it's not decentralized, then it is centralized. Any time throughout history that somebody has tried to consolidate all of the power, have complete control of the totality of the world, it has not worked. The earth has never seen a single global ruler. But there are forces at play right now trying to consolidate as much power as they can under their thumb. And Bitcoin says, no, you can't do that. To gain control of Bitcoin, you have to actually put energy in, meaning you actually have to go and build a dam or a nuclear power plant. To change Bitcoin, you actually have to make the world a better place. If you want to control the power of Bitcoin, to do anything with Bitcoin, you actually have to generate power. And how do you generate power? It depends on how you want to do it. A river, wind turbines, solar panels, nuclear power plant, doesn't really matter. Energy is energy is energy.
El Salvador, this conference, announced 2 years ago that it would accept Bitcoin as legal tender. Look what's happened in the meantime. Crime is down over 99% in that country. The murder rate is down over 99%. You want to know why? Is it because of Bitcoin? In part, it's because it reflects a national self-confidence. A nation that is confident enough to actually accept competition to its status quo is a nation that's confident enough to take on its own greatest challenges at home as well. We can learn from the countries that have already done it, bring that back home here.
Vivek's on point there. We can learn and should learn from places like El Salvador. I just hope that the United States of America isn't last in line to figure this out, because if we are, it might be too late at that point. That is why it is so encouraging to see two proponents of Bitcoin running for president on stage at Bitcoin Miami 2023. Now, at the outset of this video, I said that I would be telling you who exactly Simply Bitcoin wants to see in the White House. And between Vivek Ramaswamy and Robert F. Kennedy Jr., come November 2024, we have no idea who will be on the ballot. All Simply Bitcoin cares about is orange versus green. If you're of the Orange Party and you want Bitcoin to flourish and be the nation state adopted currency for the world over, then you're probably going to have our support. If you are of the Green Party and you want fiat currency to remain in place, then we have no interest in anything that you have to do. Even if the first president doesn't fully, completely understand all of the benefits of Bitcoin, that doesn't really matter. It will usher in the floods of change that will inevitably follow. The first president that is pro-Bitcoin will lead to a following president that is Bitcoin. Because once you get that door open, there really isn't any closing it. Nobody, and I mean nobody, that understands what Bitcoin truly is and how it fundamentally changes everything that we know goes back to the old way. Nobody sees that bright orange future and says, actually, I want something that is all bad, no good, all rotten. Nobody wants that once you see the glorious future that Bitcoin can usher in. No matter who we see taking the White House in 2024, I have one hope, and that is that they understand Bitcoin to some degree, any degree, and that they are for Bitcoin, because that is what will usher in the generations of change that will inevitably follow.